Welcome back, all of you music lovers and casual observers of music, whatever you may be. And either way, you still join us and you join us each week. This is the year 2006. And it was kind of a down year for me, but guys, I don't know if you saw, we got a lot of responses for this year. And
before we get into that, I want to give an insider peek into our process here to the folks. I have a format that I made on Google Docs, and I have a notes section. So I could jot down notes of things I found interesting of the year. I have yet to use it until this week because we usually spend a couple minutes chatting after these videos record. Someone last week just closed us out because he did not want to chitty chat with us.
Someone is an old man who shakes his hand at the clouds and still doesn't know how to use computers. And that someone is me.
You record 17 videos a week for your YouTube page, and you don't know how to use Zoom, Daniel? Come on.
Yeah, the worst part is I'm actually on Zoom all day, too. That's the worst part. And I actually had a bunch of stuff to say last week, but we had a lot of responses this week. And not just that, but pretty extensive lists and very eclectic lists and some very well thought out stuff. So props to everybody who participated this week, because it's pretty awesome to see just how thorough this stuff is getting and bringing in some kind of outside tracks. I noticed that quite a few of the songs that were named weren't exactly the most popular on the albums for those years. So I love it. And there's a lot to share, to be honest. And that's really exciting. My guy, Tim Connor, first time he's commented on here. I think he's commented on our videos. He doesn't have Facebook or Twitter or anything like that. Really good friend of mine here. And he watches every episode and he never has a way to comment. So he actually emailed me his responses this time around. He's my best dude.
Dedication right there. That's awesome.
He's my best dude for life. And he gave us Speak from Godsmack, Vicarious from Tool, Prayer of the Refugee from Rise Against. He said Suffer and The Witness, another great album. Truth from Seether, Face Down from Red Jumpsuit Apparatus, Revelations from Audio Slave, and a special shout out to his girl Cassie, You and Me. And we have Jen Pop, who's back. She gave us Hate Me from Blue October, Crazy from Gnarls Barkley, Snap Your Fingers, Lil Jon, Steady As She Goes from Rockin' Tears. My guy Steve Fink gave us McDamn Sure from Taking Back Sunday. Love that track. Chasing Cars from Snow Patrol. Thank you, Grey's Anatomy. Face Down from Red Jumpsuit Apparatus, Welcome to the Black Parade from My Chemical Romance, and pretty much the entire Sam's album by The Killers, which that whole album sounded very different from their first album, but still had a lot of play and a lot of love. Corey Banker, who, shout out to this guy, he just made the best, I don't know if you guys saw the stuff I was tagged in, but he made the best 3D printer cosplay outfits for his kids. Like, they're the Power Rangers and they're absolutely stunning and amazing. Shout out to Corey Banker, but the time and effort and love he put into that was amazing. But he gave us Sexy Back from Justin Timberlake. He said there was just no other music released that year. His year prior, he was all in on Mariah. Jeff Warden, friend of the show here, he said he sincerely thinks that Billboard had it right with Bad Day from Daniel Powter. It's the rock piano tune, the simple percussion behind it, and Powter's not phenomenal vocals. He sounds like a guy just wrote a song in college that he just played for himself. He isn't trying too hard, no major jump in keys or octaves. It's just a perfect sing-along song for the car, party, or for karaoke. It can be sung by anyone. It's a positive spin on a bum deal we all have from time to time. It's got everything great that a song can deliver. Twitch, I kind of wanted to nudge Jeff into working for Rolling Stone to revamp their reviews of stuff, because I think that was very well written.
I was thinking when I read this comment earlier in the week that I'm waiting for the Jeff and Tony spin-off of this.
That would actually be exciting. Vern Johnson, who does, you heard it from Vern first on this channel for comic book releases, gave us Neo Sexy Love, Nelly Furtado, Promiscuous, the Red Hot Chili Peppers with Danny California, and Akon, I Want to Love You. Jessica Snyder-Teki gave us Waiting on the World to Change from John Mayer and Jesus Take the World from Carrie Underwood. We will not get into another American Idol debate this week. However, multiple people did text me about our American Idol chatter from last week, and it was pretty funny.
Listen, American Idol peaked when Ruben Studdard did A Whole New World. Everything was downhill from there.
I can't disagree with that, to be honest.
It had a small rise when Anoop was on there, but only because Anoop is so fun to say.
No.
I really can't.
Adam Lambert was legitimately the best contestant they ever had.
I didn't like Lambert then. I don't like Lambert now.
I'm actually with you there. And let's not come for Ruben because I loved his debut album. Our Tony DeRomanis gave us, he's going to build off my ambitious Velvet Revolver claim from '04, while Scott Weiland was enjoying his newly shot to the top fame as once again rock star lead singer. His former bandmate said, "Okay, pal, if you can do it, so can we," which led to the DeLeo brothers, along with Ray Loser from David Lee Roth and Korn, forming a supergroup with Richard Patrick and calling it Army of Anyone. They lasted a whole year and a half. The song is Goodbye, and I'm sure it will get shot down. You guys know I love collaborations. You guys rock. Can't wait to check out '04 and '05. He did catch up on those this weekend, and his comments were quite funny, and he also chastised me for harassing him on his birthday to give us a song list. So thank you for the bullying, Gregory. Phil Punt gave us When You Were Young from the Killers and Sexy Back from JT, as well as Call Me When You're Sober from Evanescence. Sadly, this was when Evanescence kind of lost me. I love Amy Lee's voice, but that album, whatever her and Sean from Seether were going through, just didn't come across, I think, the way that she was hoping with the lyrics, but hell of a voice. Ellen Sadler, who joined us recently. Of course, Josh Groban made the list, as she made known it would. His third studio album and Keith Urban's fourth came out the same day. She said, "What a gift." You Are Loved, Don't Give Up by Josh Groban. Stupid Boy from Keith Urban. Life Ain't Always Beautiful, Gary Allen. Put Your Records On, Corinne Bailey Rae. What Hurts the Most from Rascal Flatts. Hips Don't Lie from Shakira. And Would You Go With Me by Josh Turner. I actually had to look a couple of those up, and it turns out they were country songs that I did not know. Mel Bynum gave us Put Your Records On from Corinne Bailey Rae. And Justin Zane gave us Jack Johnson, We're Going to Be Friends, Blue October, Hate Me, and Into the Ocean. Snow Patrol, Hands Open. He said the whole Eyes Open album kicks. It's definitely have an entry from this album in 2007 as well. That album was absolutely spectacular. I loved Snow Patrol prior to that album, and they grew on me even after that album. Their indie stuff was just so well written. Phoenix, Long Distance Call, Angels and Airwaves, The Adventure, Weird Al, White and Nerdy. Forgot all about that song, to be honest. Census Fail, Calling All Cars, Lonely Island and JT, Dick in a Box. Fall Out Boy, A Little Less 16 Candles, A Little More Touch Me, and Death Cab, I'll Follow You Into the Dark. A lot of tracks mentioned here in the comments, a lot. And that's really exciting, actually, because as you know, I pare down my list based on what other people say, so I get rid of it. So my list for the first time ever is a page, and I love it, and I'm going to hopefully get rid of more. I knew my top 5 right off the bat. I don't know how simple it was for you gents. I also noticed that this is more of the year where I started to turn more into the indie stuff than I did the popular stuff and everything else that was out. So that was interesting for me. And Gregory, I'm wondering what debuts you focused on this week.
Well, there's a lot of debuts this year for 2006. Morningwood, Arctic Monkeys, who I wasn't particularly a fan of this debut, but they released the debut album and the EP this year, so that they double dipped in this year. Neo was mentioned earlier; his debut was this year. The rapper Rhymefest, who I believe has a writing credit on Jesus Walks, but his debut record was this year. The Little Willies, which is like a country supergroup that features Norah Jones. Hit the Lights, Gnarls Barkley, which was mentioned earlier. This was that debut, continuing this trend of Danger Mouse working with cool artists, doing cool stuff, which continues, I think, to this day. I think probably took a little bit of a dip with COVID, but he probably shouldn't be collaborating with people. So Rock Kills Kids, Les Claypool of Primus, his debut album was this year.
That was an interesting one too.
Yeah, Primus is an odd guy, or Les Claypool is an odd guy. Primus is an odd band. He played Bonnaroo the year I was there, and he was one of those bands that was kind of nice because you didn't need to watch it. You could just like kind of lay down in the shade somewhere if you can find shade at Bonnaroo and listen to it. Frightened Rabbits, their debut was this year. The one and only album from the new Cars, which was a couple of the guys from Cars just re-recording Cars albums. Josh Radin, his album was this year. Cute Is What We Aim For, debut album. Tom York solo album, because the world needed a Tom York solo album. Blackstone Cherry, Pharrell's solo album was this year. Silverstone Pickup, Hello Goodbye. Massive debut album from the Jonas Brothers. And every album after that for them. will be massive. Boys Like Girls. Paris Hilton released an album. I remember she released a single. I didn't remember it was a full album, but that came out this year.
Was that the same year as House of Wax too? She had like the movie and the album going.
I think it was, yeah. The Fratellis, their first album was this year, an album that mine and Joe's father really, really loves. Vanessa Hudgins' debut album was this, riding off. This would have been the second High School Musical about this time, so riding off that.
This is the first High School Musical.
Oh, this was still.
Snap!
Right?
I didn't know there was a second, so here I am.
There's three of them. There's three. The third one is a theatrical release, which I saw opening night. So,
and there's a TV show, High School Musical, the
series.
Yes, where Olivia Rodrigo debuted, and
yes.
I am privy to that one.
I mean, give it up for the High School Musical franchise. Like, you got Zac Efron, you got Vanessa Hudgens in Spring Breakers. I actually like Vanessa Hudgens, so not Spring Breakers. Beach House's debut album was this year. Big indie band. I know when I went to Chicago to see Spoon, we were going to catch Beach House that too, but they sold out like the club they were in like last minute. So Taylor Swift's debut album was this year.
There it is.
Much like Jonas, like taking over the world. Bring Me the Horizon. Flavor Flav's solo album was this year, so you know that was a banger when the hype man for Public Enemy releases an album.
Jesus Christ.
Another banger, Kevin Federline's album was this year. Daughtry, indie rock band Deer Hunter, their debut album was this year. I saw them open for the Black Keys.
Ooh, nice.
1 year. Pretty fun show. Oh no, I saw them open for Spoon, not the Black Keys. Sorry, that was like Typewriter Island or Monster Island or something that opened for the Black Keys. And then maybe the most important debut album of that year, and I know will definitely come up on at least two of our lists, Matt Costa's Songs We Sing.
Oh, that's great.
Which brilliant fun album. He released an album last year himself, so he's still out doing his thing too. But yeah, that's what I noticed for debuts. Once again, I probably missed something, especially if it was from American Idol, but that's what we got.
I love it.
I wasn't tracking debuts this year, other than a couple of the ones I knew. So I'm not here to correct today.
Well, it's interesting, and I don't know if it was a new change that Wikipedia made into how it's like formatting the site, or if it's just for this couple of years. But last year, instead of like, I usually go the year in music so I can get everything, but now it's albums released in, and it's kind of fun because it gives the genres. So it's hilarious to read the genres of some of this crap, because genres is the most ridiculous thing in the world. I think that's a whole episode, is we just compose our favorite nonsense genres.
So I think it's because of the amount of music now being released. As we've gone through time, there is more access to not just like, I mean, even today, obviously, I can just sit here and record a song with this mic that actually does a decent enough job and post it to Spotify, right? But even as we started into the 2000s and stuff, the significant drop in like cost to just have your own home studio equipment and stuff just made music so much more accessible to so many more people, that I think we're just seeing a lot more music released each year. And so when things get too big, Wikipedia tends to break them off into their own page.
Well, the reason why I'm curious about this is because when I started the first iteration of Cool Points, coolpoints.net, I, for my year-end albums, used Wikipedia to make sure there wasn't something I missed, and it was still the format that I was used to Wikipedia. So I think it's a new change. So I don't know if it was just a change for these couple years, or if it's like an actual format change in Wikipedia. I guess I could go to 2012. I think would have been the first time I would have used. I could go to 2012 and see if it's different. But
we had a lot of fun debuts there, and a lot of bands that didn't really stick around to now. But I'm curious, Joseph, where did any of these land on your list, or who made the list? I actually, of the songs that were mentioned from our comments, 2 of them made my top 5, and I actually have a question to ask when it comes to my top songs. So where do we land this year?
So I'm not sure any of my tops were mentioned in the comments. So it'll be interesting. I think it was yesterday, Gregory asked me what I thought of this year in music, and I hadn't done my list yet. I did it today. And it's interesting because I feel like this year was kind of a lean year overall, except when I'm looking at it for me personally, I think it was a pretty decent year, actually. And I think the reason is something I've mentioned before. 2006 would have been the second half of my sophomore year, first half of my junior year. And, I've mentioned before, I was very picky about the music I was listening to because I really had to not listen to anything I thought somebody might think was uncool. And so this year we had a lot of things that I felt fell directly into that like perfect category of it was safe to listen to. And so my list is split up into things I was listening to at the time, and then a couple of songs I now like in retrospect, having gone back to listen. But before we get into that, just to start off with, the elephant in the room, what we're all actually thinking, the best song of this year is "Stick to the Status Quo," the High School Musical cast. I know we've talked about doing soundtracks separately, but it is the best song that was released this year, probably.
Not even the best song off that soundtrack.
Oh, bullshit. It's the best one off that.
Oh, I don't know any of the songs on that soundtrack.
Stick to the Status Quo is great. It's a song all about breaking out and not feeling like you have to stick into your clique, and jocks can like to bake and stuff like that. It's wonderful.
Oh, I dig.
It's a wonderful message, but not the best song on there. Vanessa Hudgins, "When There Was You and Me," like.
Incorrect, but anyway.
Also, we're all in this together.
That one's got the best dance scene.
It does have the best dance scene. I mean, outside of Grease 2's Cool Rider, maybe the best dance scene in movie musicals.
Jesus, I know nothing of this.
Okay, so I'll start with a couple that, in retrospect, I like a lot more than I was listening to back then. Just because. So the first one is My Chemical Romance. I think this is their second album. But the whole Gerard Way with the guy liner and stuff like that. It was a very ticky tack thing to want to listen to that in high school because you got branded with the emo kids. Although it's not really emo. But I mean, that album absolutely slaps. You've got Welcome to the Black Parade, which is everyone's favorite, probably me included. Famous Last Words, Teenagers. The album did so well, even my father liked it, came to me and asked me if the whole album sounded like Teenagers so he could go and buy it. Alexis on Fire. This album was great. This Could Be Anywhere in the World is a wonderful track. I like every version of it pretty much. The original, and when City in Color, I mean, he goes and does a version of it with his other band too.
Yep.
But then at the time, some of the things I was listening to, Billy Talent, Surrender, I feel like was everywhere on the radio during this year. Probably not my favorite on the album, but because I remember hearing it everywhere. We'll go with that one.
I have a question about that Billy Talent song. It was everywhere for us, but we grew up on the Canadian border. So for the folks who didn't grow up on the Canadian border, how familiar are you with Billy Talent and specifically this song?
Billy Talent was not really that big on this end unless you were watching. Billy Talent made VH1.
Okay.
A few occasions, but really radio play wise, it wasn't there. It was more of like, I was still reading Spin magazine at the time. So like, that's how I was always up on artists and stuff. But in terms of like radio play and stuff, we didn't have any.
Interesting. And here I thought Surrender was a massive song because it was on The Bear. It was on Shay. It was on The Bear When It Became Virgin. It was pretty much it was 99.9 The Buzz in Plattsburgh.
There was nothing here. Billy Talent was on NHL. Was it 06 or 07? They were on the soundtrack, and I think that's when a lot of people in my neck of the woods heard about them.
Interesting. That's good to know. I mean, I think Billy Talent's great. I think it's wonderful music. Regina Spektor. This is probably my favorite of the Regina Spektor albums. Not
Great
that I've
album.
heard them all, but Samson and On the Radio are both on this one. Probably my favorite too. Taking Back Sunday, make damn sure it was already mentioned. Although if you listen to the actual lyrics to that song, it's incredibly creepy. It's like a stalker anthem, I feel like, but we're not going to delve into the lyrics too much right now. Album Gregory mentioned, the Fratellis. Again, one my father loves, but to me, this album is one of the best. Like, if you just want to wake up and have a good morning, put this album on. It's so upbeat. It's so much fun to listen to. Henrietta, Dog in a Bag, probably my two favorites off there. Hello Goodbye, another one Gregory mentioned, I believe. Here in Your Arms, and then Touchdown Turnaround, which I think fewer people know.
That album start to finish was amazing.
It's so much fun, and it to me, because of the time it came out, I have a lot of memories of hearing that with like hanging out with friends back in high school, just hanging out in basements and stuff, and that song being on.
Well, that was the time. So for me in college, that's when we were putting out, like, we had to make a banger playlist for the party and stuff like that. I could actually just put that album on start to finish, and everybody was fine with it. Like, it was one of those just great albums you could do that with.
Breaking Benjamin, a band I've talked about ad nauseum at this point. Breathe was probably their most successful single they ever had. Not the best song off that album. I'll take Dance with the Devil for my money. Silver Sun Pickups, another one Gregory mentioned. Lazy Eye, I think, is the one everyone knows, including myself. Red Jumpsuit Apparatus. There's a couple off this album that I go back to regularly. Face Down, of course, being the most well known, but also False Pretense is probably my favorite. If you know Face Down and you like that song, go back and revisit False Pretense. It's just as good, if not better. Rise Against. This was my favorite. I think this is my favorite Rise Against album because it's got Roadside on it. That song's amazing. If you like Swing Life Away, you'll like Roadside. It's not quite like all of the other stuff, but also Under the Knife, great song. Also featured in Never Back Down, which was one of my favorite movies to watch after a UFC event. Daughtry, Used To, and All These Lives. Although that entire album I really like, and I didn't realize Daughtry was still making music. I might check some of that out. Who knows? And that's kind of all that's kind of my short list. My top three was actually difficult to narrow down. It does contain one I like now more in retrospect. So going back to kind of the things I picked up later in life. I always say the band's name wrong. Seosin, You're Not Alone. It doesn't matter how long it's been. This song slaps. It's amazing. And it always feels like it's of the time. I don't know. Like some songs seem to age. Mm-hmm. That one doesn't feel like it ages to me. Tenacious D had, again, this one's kind of cheating because it's also kind of a soundtrack because they had the Pick of Destiny soundtrack this year, which had the songs from the movie, but then a couple of other songs on it as well. But I could listen to this album nonstop. It starts with Kickapoo and then never stops. And you come to Classico, where we're first introduced to JB and Kyle Gass as a tandem. And then it kind of finishes with Beelzebub, and that song is the best, heavily featuring David Grohl. So, of course, I'm going to love it. So if I had to pick one, probably Beelzebub. The song's awesome. But my number one comes from Matt Costa, an album that has meant a lot to me, as well as Gregory. And this one was tough because it was difficult just to narrow down to like my favorite songs off this album. And so it came down between Cold December, A Stare, and Yellow Taxi. Yeah, you can grab. Go ahead. You shouldn't be in the shop. You're good. And of those three, I'm flipping a 3-sided coin in my head right now because those exist. Cold December. It's Cold December today.
You're a bastard.
Great track.
I mean, it's Yellow Taxi today.
Well, here's the thing. I'm between two songs, and one of them is Yellow Taxi. So had you just said Yellow Taxi, it would have made up my decision. Between
well, in that case, it's still Cold December.
I actually remember buying that album because you know how Media Play used to have the I think it was Media Play, yeah, the new music section or whatever, and it would be like the CDs were only like $7.99 for new music. And
Yeah.
so I remember buying it was either Best Buy. No, it was when our Media Play became a Best Buy. But I remember just buying that sight unseen, just hadn't heard a thing. I was just like, oh, cool, I'll pick up new artists. I always just picked up new music and stuff back when I collected CDs. And I threw it in the car knowing nothing. And I got home for the half-hour ride, absolutely loving everything I had heard. It was just such a great album.
It's an interesting one because I couldn't tell you how I found it, but I remember listening to Whiskey and Wine and thinking how much Gregory would like that song. And so I had mentioned that to him. And that kind of got me down the rabbit hole of the rest of the stuff. And when I was still trying to play guitar, I attempted to learn Sweet Rose as well as A Stare at one point, but I never really got good enough to do that. But
it's a really great album, start to finish. Really, I recommend it to anybody. So Gregory, now that we know one of your top songs, what are the rest of them? Also, excellent hat.
Thank you. Well, first off, I just want to shout out Vern. I always love like his comic stuff because he reads such an eclectic mix of comics. It seems like he just reads everything.
Yeah.
And his music selection, like you can just tell Vern's into everything. And so like I just love that. If you haven't watched any of Vern's comic stuff, like watch it. It's just good. I don't read current comics, but I still like watch Vern talk about them. So
his excitement is always what gets me too. He loves it.
Yeah, it's just nice to see. Other thing before I get in the list, My Chemical Romance, I just don't get. I don't understand. And I also kind of hate their reunion tour that sold out. How many like memes I saw about emo being back. And I think that goes back to genres being stupid anyway, because they're not emo. They're like in indie rock, like a heavy indie rock at best. Like, but whatever, emo is kind of this weird mix of every genre possible if you just want to call it emo.
I tried to go to their reunion show because it was in LA, and I was like, well, I'm in California still anyway. I was in the online queue like an hour and a half before tickets went on sale, and they were sold out before it ever made it to my spot in that line. So that was annoying.
Yeah, I believe I heard similar stories from a lot of people. And then final thing before I get to my list is Put Your Records On. I didn't realize that song came out this year, and it's brilliant, and it would have been in my list had I heard it before, but like brilliant choice there. Anyway, let's get into it. So Joe finished with Matt Costa. So Cold December, Sunshine, and I mean, really everything on this, but those two, I mean, we'll get into a third here in a minute, but Rihanna's SOS.
Yes.
I mean, this song was everywhere for the next decade, I feel like. Gnarls Barkley, Crazy was mentioned, but also Gone Daddy Gone, just a brilliant track. Red Hot Chili Peppers, I really didn't like Stadium Arcadium, and I just love that the song's not even listed on the album anymore after the lawsuit. So, but I did like Danny California. That was like the one track off this album I liked. The Raccooners, who I did not list as debut albums for some reason, but Steady As She Goes was just a great track off that. I feel like a lot of these Jack White projects after the White Stripes I'm not a huge fan of. I feel like there's also only one Dead Weather song in the couple albums that I liked. But I also saw them at Bonnaroo as well, and they were just kind of a band that was fun to listen to. It was like raining in the middle of the afternoon, so I sat and listened to them like at the campsite. Nelly Furtado, Promiscuous was mentioned. Maneater, I think that's the best two strong stretch of the year, is those two tracks.
Such great production on that whole album too.
Yeah.
Timbaland like made a whole difference in that music.
Joshua Radin was mentioned, the song Winter being I think the one everyone knows, and the reason he recorded an album. Like, it was just a song he had that they put onto Scrubs, and it was such a hit, he recorded an album.
3 weeks in a row, we got Scrubs mentions.
Yeah, there's going to be a couple of Scrubs mentions in this episode. And also closer off that album, Joe mentioned Regina Spektor. I'm probably in agreement with him. I think this is her best album, although I love them all. Fidelity, Better, Samson, On the Radio, just all brilliant. Jurassic 5 had a album this year, Work It Out with Dave Matthews. And then Where We At with Mos Def, or Yazin Bey, I guess is what he's going by now, but I'm not sure. Like, Yazin Bey is his actual name now. I don't know if he's using Mos Def as a stage name. I kind of tried to look it up, but I didn't spend too much time on it. So if you know the answer to that, please mention it in the comments, because I'm really curious, because I've seen him build as Mos Def, and I've seen him build as Yazin Bey since he changed the name. So
and in his recent stuff, he still calls himself Mos Def in his lines, like in his lyrics.
Yeah. And on Spotify, he's still like listed as Mos Def on everything, including his own. So
could be an identity crisis.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but yeah. Breaking Benjamin, Breathe, and Diary of Jane, I think are two of my favorites off that album. Peter, Bjorn, and John released a great album. I think everyone's heard the song Young Folks, even if they don't realize they've heard it.
Yep.
Really loved Amsterdam off that album as well. Bob Dylan's Modern Times came out this year. Really good album. I mean, even the one Dylan released in 2020 was really good too, but When the Deal Goes Down, I think, is my favorite off that. Justin Timberlake's Sexy Back, my second favorite Justin Timberlake track. Ben Queller's self-titled third album, which I've noticed while doing this, is the self-titled third album is way more common than you would imagine. I don't know why it's the first or the third album or the last album that's going to be self-titled. So. But Sundress and I Gotta Move are two of the standout tracks on that, but like, it's another great album from him. Beck's The Informant was out this year. I Think I'm in Love's the best track off of that. The Decemberists, another great album, The Crane Wife, which is based on an old Japanese tale. The Crane Wife Part 3, I think, opens the album on that, or is in the middle somewhere, I don't know. But that was another one that was on an episode of Scrubs as well. Great track. Sons and Daughters, another great track off that, was in The Office, in the Schrute Farms spinoff episode that never came. But yeah, great album from the Decemberists. John Legend, Save Room, and PDA, We Just Don't Care, my two favorites off that. Amy Winehouse's Rehab, I think the best track off that album, best Amy Winehouse track anyway, and kind of unfortunate based on what happened to her, RIP Amy Winehouse. Tom Petty, his last solo album was this year. Saving Grace is that opener. What I think may have been the best opening track of the year, which I don't think is something I've tracked yet in this, but there you guys go. Best opening track. And then Damaged by Love is later in that album, is also fantastic. But Saving Grace is honestly my favorite later day Tom Petty track. It's just brilliant. The Black Keys, Your Touch, I think was really the first big single for the Black Keys, although we're going to get into their their breakout album for a couple years. Damien Rice's second album, which was brilliant. This might be my favorite Damien Rice album, but maybe the third is my favorite Damien Rice album, or maybe the first. Who knows? They're all my favorite. The Animals Were Gone and Coconut Skins. TV on the Radio, I think this was their breakout album. Like Wolf Like Me is the biggest track off that. It's a wonderful track. My dear friend Nicole, who I'd mentioned last week, is seeing Spoon with. This was a track, like, we worked together. We instantly knew we were going to be best friends. And then I came into work one day and she was playing this song from TV on the Radio, and we knew for sure.
I think that was the year they were on the Entourage soundtrack, wasn't it? And that kind of gave them some push.
Yeah, and this album, like, everyone was covering it. You mentioned Spin earlier, Dan. Spin gave them a lot of love.
Yeah.
Stone gave them love. So, and then Mos Def released maybe the most interesting album of the year, in the fact that there's no cover art and no back art. It's literally just a clear case with the disc in it. And I believe I read it at the time, and we're going back a long time ago, but the studio originally tried to release it with album art and had to pull it because Mos Def made them. And so this album was released December 29th. And, albums are released before Christmas to get them Christmas sales. I guess that's not as true now, but still to an extent is.
Mhm.
But Most Defs did not make the Christmas sales because he insisted it be released with no artwork. But Dollar Day, I think, is the best track off that. Really touches on what happened with Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah.
And finally, my usually what I've been doing is 5, but it is 6. Until the End, Breaking Benjamin. Americans Abroad Against Me off the live album, and I usually don't track live albums, but this is the first and I think only time Americans Abroad was recorded. Laura Jane Grace has spoken against this live album. She doesn't like it at all. But I love Americans Abroad. So mentioned the Fratellis. Joe mentioned a couple of the tracks, but Chelsea Dagger, I'm a Blackhawks fan, and the fact that this is their score song in arena. In fact, if I'm just watching a game by myself, I will have this track up ready to go on Spotify if they score a goal, which happens a little bit less now that the team is in a kind of rebuilding mode.
I still haven't gotten over them beating the Flyers in the Stanley Cup, so
I was heading down to, oddly enough, for the third mention tonight, I was heading down to Bonnaroo when that happened. Ben Queller's Run is my favorite track off that album. I know I mentioned 2 others, but that's the one that makes the short list. And the 2 I was debating between Yellow Taxi for Matt Costa, which is just brilliant, and a girl I had a crush on back then, used to make it her away message all the time on AIM. For you older listeners, I think Alan would have missed the AIM days. But then also Grey Room from Damien Rice, which is my favorite Damien Rice song, I think, of all time. I love it. It puts me in a mood. I'm going to go Grey Room since Matt Costa's already a song of the year for this year. So yeah, Grey Room, Damien Rice is going to be my song of the year.
So I really don't like that you guys get to use some of my favorite singer-songwriters against me when we're coming to determine our favorite songs of these years. Because though the songs may not be my jam, it's the artists still are. So thanks for putting up Damien Rice against anything I put up, because that'll probably win for me.
I mean, the fact that this isn't your favorite song just shows you're wrong anyway. Because this song is brilliant, and my dear friend Dan Sir had drawn a picture of a guy sitting in a tub wearing like a full scuba suit, drinking a glass of wine, and we were going to write a story about this guy, and the soundtrack to this story was Grey Room, just because it feels like it sets the mood of a guy who's in the kind of state where he's in a fucking scuba suit in the bathtub drinking wine. Like that is the mood of this song. It was honestly, in 2006 was probably the mood of my life too. So it's one of those that's going to carry with me because of that.
I'm all for it. And to be honest, my list is the shortest I've had thus far. Christina Aguilera gave us Ain't No Other Man and Candyman. And as many know, I went by Candyman Candace for the longest time so that clients and students couldn't find me. And so that song was sent to me numerous times. I hate the song, to be honest, but I've got to give it a mention. Incubus delivered what at the time was probably my least favorite album of theirs, but it has grown on me a lot. And so they gave us Animali, Diamonds and Cold, and Love Hurts. I couldn't stand any of that when that album came out, but I actually really enjoy them now. Nas gave us Black Republican. I absolutely love that track. Pussycat Dolls with Buttons. It was everywhere. Jibs with Chain Hang Low. That was just somehow a song that caught on, shouldn't have, but I feel like I want to put it back.
I'd forgotten that was a song. So way to ruin the rest of my life, Dan.
Yeah, I thought it had to be back in the universe because I had to suffer, so do you. Some Snow Patrol songs are mentioned, but Open Your Eyes and Set Fire to the Third Bar. Excellent songs. They owe a lot to Grey's Anatomy for putting them on the map with many of their tracks over the years. Buck Cherry gave us Crazy Bitch, and I watched every middle-aged person at the bar playing pool say that that's their anthem, and I never quite understood why, but props to you for living that life. Boys Like Girls, I don't know if people realize the gravity of the singles that came out off that album for pop punk fans, but Dance Hall Drug, 5 Minutes to Midnight, Hero Heroine, On Top of the World, Thunder, and The Great Escape all came off that album. All were singles, all charted, all tracked, and then they disappeared. But well, no, they had Two is Better Than One with Haley or whatever after that. But all of those songs tracked, and it's wild to think about that because nobody thinks about them now. But what a year for them on that album. Snow from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Do It For Me Now from Angels and Airwaves. I think the Angels and Airwaves album was a great concept, but the lyrics were quite lazy if you think about all the lyrics we got from Blink-182, and just it just wasn't great, but it was a fun sound. Don't Matter and Smack That from Akon, Fergalicious and Glamorous from Fergie. And I say that because they're awful, but they were everywhere. And I want to throw that back out in the universe too, so that it's in your head. But no, they're awful.
We were supposed to be a reprieve for folks.
Flawed Design from Stabilo. I wanted to ask you guys, because that came out of Canada too. Did you guys know much about them at all on your end, or was that more?
So I mentioned them last year, but they were still going by Stabilo Boss at that time.
Yes.
Everybody was released in 2005, I believe.
Yep.
And so we got a little bit of it, but other than Everybody, I don't think I remember hearing any of it. It's one of those things where it's possible that they came up and I just didn't realize who it was at the time.
We only got it because there was a radio station around here that became like a singer-songwriter station, and what they've labeled as alternative, which was really just like kind of indie music. And they played that song all the time, and that's how I heard it. And I fell in love with it. And that's back when we downloaded music. I downloaded everything I could find on those guys and freaking loved it. But Flawed Design is great. I have Gravity from John Mayer listed, not because I think it's a great track, but because the version he did with Alicia Keys live is one of my favorite live performances of all time. And so it's just has to be mentioned. Also, the guitar in it is absolutely excellent. Here Goes Again from OK Go, Hustlin' from Rick Ross, The Boss. I Bet You Look Good on the Dance Floor from Arctic Monkeys. I think the only song I like off that album that was critically acclaimed, and I don't quite understand why. Irreplaceable from Beyonce, Is It Any Wonder from Keane, Love and Memories from OAR, which I did not start liking that song until about 3 years ago. I hated that song because when it came out, it was just everywhere around us. And I loved OAR, and that was a song that kind of put it so that everybody else would love OAR. And it's like, oh, you like OAR? You know Love and Memories? It's like, nah, I listened to their 5-hour live album. Miss Murder from AFI, Moneymaker and Runaway Love from Ludacris when he started to kind of turn more towards some more serious stuff. Mr. Larkin from State Radio, which is my favorite State Radio song they released. Chadwick's band after Dispatch, and then jumping back into Dispatch and then back into State Radio. It was a love affair. I love them both. I Wish from Rascal Flatts, a song I've played at so many weddings for the mother of the groom dance. Nothing Less Left to Lose from Matt Carney. Fun story about Matt Carney is when I worked at doing catering for the college, we were doing a concert and, selling burgers and all that stuff. And there's a dude just kind of chilling on a picnic table. I was just shooting the shit with him. And it turns out it was Matt Carney. I had no idea. Knew the songs, had no idea what he looked like, but he was the nicest guy in the world. He bought a salty hot dog just to have it before he went on stage. And I felt really bad for selling it to him because I knew what it was going to do to his insides later. Our song and Tim McGraw from Taylor Swift. Not my favorite Taylor Swift album by any means, but knowing just how much she put into that of her own writing is incredible. Read My Mind from The Killers, I think was the one for that year. Rewind from Paolo Nutini. He became bigger for New Shoes, but Rewind is my favorite song of Paolo's. Riding from Chameleonaire. I forgot all about it until doing my search. Was happy I forgot about it, but here we are. Unfaithful from Rihanna. Save Room from John Legend. Love that track. So Sick from Neo, which was everywhere, and somehow it was everybody's breakup song. Show Me What You Got, Jay-Z. Through Glass from Stone Sour. That was one of 3 Stone Sour songs I think I like from them. But that was just an absolutely great track. Through the Fire and Flames from Dragon Force, which I think became popular from Guitar Hero, not because anybody really liked it. Too Little Too Late from JoJo. Got to mention her anytime we can. Touch It from Busta Rhymes, not because of the original, but because of how many remixes came from that song and how great they were. You in Your Hand, Who Knew from Pink. You Give Me Something from James Morrison. Upside Down from Jack Johnson. I say that as a big Curious George fan with many Curious George tattoos. That soundtrack was a banger, so I have to list a song off of there.
So I specifically left off because originally Lullaby was on my list as well. But I've always been salty about that album because everything's credited to Jack Johnson featuring other people, but the vast majority of the album is not him.
And you can tell how much influence G-Love had on a lot of it.
And it's just it always and specifically with Lullaby, like if you go through, the majority of the guitar is Matt Costa, 90% of the vocals is Matt Costa, and yet it's Jack Johnson featuring him. And I'm like, fuck Jack Johnson. I'm not listening on my list.
I
never listened to it because, well, fuck Jack Johnson. So
yeah, I like the environment. It's Lauren's favorite guy, and it's Curious George. I gotta take it. I have more Curious George tattoos than any adult should admit to. What about Now from Daughtry, which spells their names all in caps now. Good for them. And a debut Greg forgot. What's Left of Me from Nick Lachey. And then Youth from Modest Yahoo. I think probably one of the only tracks I liked off that album. And then we get into my final songs. And I'm going to name my 5 before I get to my final 2, and then I have a question. So I have Stupid Boy from Keith Urban. I think this is only the second country song to make any of my tops. Winter from Joshua Radin, amazing track. Chasing Cars from Snow Patrol. Undiscovered from James Morrison. Ride from Carey Brothers, which is one of my favorite songwriters of all time. And then am I allowed to have 2 number 1s for the year?
Wait, where did you discover Carey Brothers?
Garden State.
I figured we mentioned Scrubs enough. We should mention Garden State as well.
Yes, from Garden State and Scrubs. And he is actually one of the few artists that I talk to on Twitter, and I don't just mean like in comments, like we chat. So absolutely love that human. He's an amazing guy. Am I allowed to have 2 number 1s or a 1.5, 1.5, or do I have to settle on 1?
I did 2 number 1s one year, so
I have 2 number 1s this year.
Did you, or was it the same artist when you did it?
I did the back 2 tracks, so I may have done another one too. So
I do not have the same artist, but I do have 2 number 1s, and if I'm not allowed to, I will make the decision.
We make the rules, so
It's true.
I'm having 2 number 1s.
We break them regularly.
I'm having 2 number 1s this year. I have Put Your Records On from Corinne Bailey Rae and Kick Push from Lupe Fiasco. I cannot choose between the 2. They're equally great in my book. And
Luckily, neither of them are going to make it out of this year anyway.
well, yeah, I can't really fight with Daniel. But yes, so that is my number 1, 2 songs. It's a 2-song stretch for me from different albums, different artists, and not even related whatsoever. But I honestly, as much as I didn't care for this year in music, I couldn't choose between them and feel okay about it. So Put Your Records On from Corinne Bailey Rae and Kick Push from Lupe.
I'm slightly annoyed that I somehow missed Stories of a Stranger as I was going through. I mean, I have it listed as 2005, which means I missed it last year too, like a dummy, because I'm a fairly big fan of OAR, and that album has a lot of great songs. It's not just Love and Memory. Heard the World, The Stranger, Lay Down's probably my favorite off of that album.
Yeah, no, they released a lot of great tracks on that one, actually. And
I saw it listed in both years, but this isn't an album that like hits for me for OAR. So
for me, this is probably, it's either this one or I know it's a little bit more of the newer stuff. It's either this or All Sides.
All Sides is definitely their best album they released, to be honest, in my opinion. But
we'll get to that in 2008.
Yes. So another interesting year in music, and we broke some rules tonight. Who cares? Life happens. And 2007 awaits us, and I don't even know what came out that year. I haven't been looking ahead anymore. I've been trying to take it in as we get there. But I've also found that I've had to go back and kind of cross-reference whether or not the songs that are listed on the stuff came out in that year or a different year, because I kind of remember like what songs were released at certain times together based on like playlists I was making and stuff. And so I'm like, it doesn't seem like it came out that year. And I'm finding that on some of the databases I'm using, some songs came out 3 years before, some were like 3 years after. So it's doing a lot of homework these days, to be honest, especially when it comes to like the singer-songwriters.
That's why it's easiest just to go when the album was released.
Yeah, and what sucks about that is there's definitely times where either a song didn't make it on an album, at least like sometimes they're released, a song is released like 3, even 4 years before an album comes out.
Or your bonus tracks come out on the re-release of an album. So like your album release is one thing, but then the bonus tracks get dropped a year and a half later, and it's
the bonus tracks are tough. There's the LL Cool J album this year, which is my least favorite LL Cool J album. hence it wasn't mentioned. But it had a bonus track that was a cover of Neo, and it's great. But I was like, it's a bonus track like on the digital release years later, so I have no idea when this came out. I'm not going to even talk about it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I did that a few years ago, right? With the Used had a bonus track where they did a cover of Under Pressure with Gerard Way. And I think it's great, but it wasn't released until the bonus 2 years later.
Right.
But I listed it anyway because I was like, it's never gonna get on anything if I don't mention it now.
Oh, I definitely feel that. For the folks listening, Joseph has been creating playlists for us for each year, and my plan is I can't seem to keep up with it. I'm going to go back and fill in whenever I get a chance to fill in all the tracks, but we'll have our tracks, your tracks, and the tracks of that year all on these great playlists for you to listen to. And it's going to be a good time, clean the house to it, party to it, whatever you got to do. And we should have said it earlier, but we didn't. But don't forget to like and subscribe and leave comments down here. The comments are the fun part, I'll be sitting on my couch, typing up notes or whatever for work. And then I get a Tony comment or whatever, a Tim comment, leave the comments. It's fun. We want to banter. We're not, what do we know? We're not always right. Leave them and we'll have some fun.
Well, and I told Joe this at dinner. I hadn't been looking at the comments because we hadn't been getting comments. And then I was like, oh man, comments. And then it's all you and Tony going back and forth.
Yeah.
So shout out to Tony.
Always shout out to Tony. Gentlemen, anything you like to highlight for the week before we close?
Ani gave me a tiger today.
I love
Really
it.
Cute.
I actually have something to share for my child as well.
She came downstairs with her little they have a little cash register and was like, Jojo, I got a surprise for you. You got to open this. And I opened it up and there was a tiger sitting in there and some fake money and a little flower beret thing. The tiger was for me. The money was for mommy. And then the flower beret was for Gregory. Although I don't think that ever actually got to him.
Oh,
was that today she did that?
Yeah.
When I was upstairs playing with the girls, she put all her change into her little toy dustpan and gave me that. So she gave mommy and I both money and you got a toy tiger.
I want to see this beret though. Gregory, any shout outs, my friend?
I'm sure there are. Well, here, I'm going to shout myself out. I was one of the employees of the month for August at Target, which is fun. Whole $5 gift card. So I don't know. It's but no, Cool Points. Substack.com/Cool Points. Subscribe and read. This Sunday was a retro one from 9 years ago, which is for me was fun to go back and read to see how my opinions have or haven't changed on things. And they have changed quite a bit since then. I definitely talked more sports back then is what I learned reading some of these retro ones, but
You don't ever throw my retro ones on there.
You know what? Reading yours this week reminded me of how long I've known you, and I consider myself lucky to have known you this long. So love it.
We met playing a massive game of darts.
And my shout out of the week, besides Cool Points, which you should all subscribe to, I don't know how well you'll see it. I have a family of Yodas from my child. She has her own version of the Yoda, and she loves to draw me stuff for work, and I frame it, I put it in my office, and it's going to be really cool by the time she's 18 to see all the stuff that she has drawn me. This is her version of Grogu. Love it, hate it, accept it. And she has many baby Yodas, if you will. And I introduced her to the Weird Al Yoda song recently, and she's obsessed with it. So it is the new anthem of my household, and I'm not ashamed of that. Just being there simply as a parent and as a human, it's an amazing thing to watch. And Joseph's hearing your songs or your tales of what's going on with these tiny tigers and berets and everything else. It's amazing. We had I don't know if it was National Mom or Son or Daughter Day, whatever occurred this past week. Everybody shared these pictures of love for their kids.
I think son and daughter are like it's daughter then son back to back, but I'm not sure.
I had no idea any of it existed.
Childless.
I saw it and I just rolled with it. And for everybody who shared their son, daughter, cat, dog, however anybody identifies, whatever. Just seeing all the love out there is amazing. And keep up that love. Don't just leave it to one day. Don't just leave it to your significant others, your children, anybody. Just spread the love as much as you can to anybody you can. It'll go a long way. So we don't need a national data to show love. We should show love every day.
Speaking of love, how about that Aaron Rodgers finish?
I mean, thanks to the kicker.
Yeah, because the kicker got himself into field goal range.
Yeah.
Vontae Adams did a lot. But gentlemen,
Okay. The Cowboys didn't need a last second field goal this week.
I mean, they beat the Eagles.
Yeah, they did.
I guess if that's something to be proud of.
They beat anyone.
All right. So we're coming into 2007 next week, and I have not previewed any tracks. I don't know how excited I am or how I am, but we shall see. But I do see myself diving more in the indie route as we move forward, just because I know where I was when those years occurred. Looking forward to it. And that means we're only going to be 3 weeks away from having to determine our winner for the 10-year span of 2000s there. So let's keep that in the back of our mind. And with that, everybody, thank you for joining us once again. And Gregory, Joseph, it's been a blast as always.